Let me tell you about this guy.
I'll tell you about this fucker right here.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas. Wait.
It's like Christmas.
Wait, we already did
I
that.
haven't taken our stuff down yet. Welcome to 2024.
Yeah.
Episode 1, 2024. It's like a milestone, except different.
Yeah. It's like a milestone, except everybody that's still alive got here also.
I mean, because it's not even a 1-year anniversary.
Nope. It's just
That's like May or something, isn't it?
yeah, we made it to the new year.
Yeah, we survived 2023. Congratulations, the remainders of you who are watching this.
Yeah.
You have made it to 2024.
Congratulations to all 60 of you. Maybe 62, at this time.
Maybe 69, dude.
69. You know what? Scratch what I said on the last episode. Anybody that subscribes after 69, I'm kicking them. Okay? That's my goal. End of 2024, I want to have 69 subscribers. Oh, man.
That is not how you make money. But January is cold.
But for the meme.
January is cold, so I got my cold weather gear on.
Is this what you went out in the wilderness with?
Actually, it is. I have a picture. But it's not cold in this house. So this thing is gone. That's my hair. Is it horrible?
No,
I can't see the monitor.
I don't know what you're talking about. There's no monitor there.
There's a monitor over there. I can't see it.
I don't know what you're talking about. Our production crew runs that. I can't tell you what the picture looks like.
Hey, Timmy, Bob, Sandy, Lisa, show me what I look like.
Why do we have so many employees? Yeah, so we decided this year, 60 subscribers, it was time to hire 6 other people. We're a lot to handle. Oh, goodness gracious. So, New Year's, everybody's starting their New Year's resolutions, right?
And I thought we would start an episode with my hair jacked up, but with a question from a subscriber. See, we're getting to you. It took us a year, but we're getting to you. All right. A subscriber wanted to know what we thought, what would happen to like the U.S. when all the boomers finally die off. And it's around the corner. Hey, boomers, you about to die. It's coming.
We're not far.
It's a long way off for you. So, you might want to revisit your will, and you might want to like sniff around the family a little bit to find out the ones who really like you versus the ones who's faking it because of the will.
Grandma, I love you.
My parents already know I love them. I am the good son and the no good son at the same time. I am their favorite son. Their only son. And therefore the barometer is low.
Yeah, by default, their favorite.
Mm-hmm. So we'll start there. It's like on a personal level, I have both my parents when they finally kick the bucket. There's only myself and my sister and her offspring and her offspring's significant others. So I feel like I'm in a good place. We've already talked about this kind of stuff and did the planning. So I think that's something the boomers as a generation has done pretty well, was planning for their demise.
Yeah, we talked about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
That generation, the generation before them, they did, for the most part, a lot of them took care of that.
Right.
Organizing it, wills, plots where we're going to put them in the hole.
And so
that.
we're not going to talk about that aspect of that today.
Nope.
We're going to talk about the overall economic aspect on the United States of America.
Well, and I would like to get into this a little bit because maybe this is where I can contribute a little. The social aspect too, right?
Yeah.
How that changes things in general. Because, so if I remember correctly, there are roughly 6 or 7 living generations at this moment. I can't remember. Is it 7? Maybe it's 6. You have the
boomers,
but you also have the silent generation still.
Yeah, boomers, silent generation,
Gen X,
millennials, Gen Z,
and Gen
Alpha. That's
right.
6.
So the 6 living generations, right?
So it's about to be 5 though.
Yeah, the boomers are gonna die before the silent generation. But no, so silent generation, I mean, they're not all dead, but like really getting up there, pretty damn close, right? We call it the 6th living, but in reality, there's very little of them left. You know, by the numbers, right? And then the boomers too. So there's 2 generations in theory very soon that there's going to be a lot of them that are no longer there.
And then there were 4.
Yeah, and then there were 4. Until 2 years, then we get another one added into that. 2025 is the new cutoff for whatever the next one's supposed to be.
Gen Beta.
Yeah, sure, whatever. Yeah,
bunch of betas.
So a social aspect too, right? Because that's a lot of people that are no longer going to be walking around at the grocery store.
And
well, walking in a
So
scooter.
for us, the boomers have the wealth.
Yeah. My understanding, this is I think the only fact that I have out of this whole episode, and it's not even a good one because I don't have the numbers. If I remember correctly, the boomer generation is the first generation, or it seems to be the first generation that held on to most of the wealth and did not really pass any of it down.
So I was reading, boomers on average has 5 times more money than the millennials.
It's a lot of times.
Yeah, 5 times more money than the millennials.
Which with inflation, that's like 8, right? Girl math.
Girl math. That means 3 times of it is free.
Yeah, right. Yeah, 5 times more wealth. It's a lot.
It is a lot.
That's a lot that is about to get redistributed.
So this is where we get to how I think Gen Z is very similar to Gen X.
Okay.
Because you're about to get fucked.
Well, got it from the local pastor. Why not all the boomers too?
So we talked before, Gen X is the forgotten generation. You know,
Right.
we're just off to the side. Everybody goes from boomers to millennials, and there's all of us in between.
Right, which is sorry, I don't mean to like derail, but it's honestly kind of crazy because there's a lot of highly evolving tech and life-changing tech that is coming from the Gen X generation. So it's interesting that it is the forgotten generation because as of right now, I mean, maybe not like a few years ago, but as of right now, there's a lot of things that are changing from Gen X, leading certain companies, making that change. So especially with the whole AI thing and all that stuff, a lot of those people are Gen X. So just interesting.
Yeah,
anyways.
it is. And I'm going to jump on that. All right. Because I was having a conversation with another Gen Xer about this very thing and how things have changed. So I think the Gen Xers were the last generation that as a whole just went in there and did things. Like, I don't know how to do it, but I'm going to try it. I'm going to put these pieces together and see what happens. Fail, success.
Right.
I think the generation after us started relying on block of education. Have I been trained to this? Did someone teach me this? And they're afraid to do something on their own
And
without
fail.
having, and failing and that kind of thing. So I think that's what's going on with Gen X and technologies. They're not afraid to go out there and say, you know, what's the worst that can happen? We blow up a computer. Big deal. You know, if that happens, we'll figure out why it blew up and fix that.
Well, and Gen X really was the main one that saw the transition. Right? They saw the transition from having relatively low tech to very high tech,
Right.
right? And they went through it at an older age. You know, the older age of like I had a lot of low tech and now very high tech, right? Very different.
Yeah.
Which gives, I think it personally gives them a new perspective on solving challenges and things like that. But, and what, you know,
Gen X has kind of gone off and done their own thing. They're boomer parents. They saw their boomer parents always working, never coming home from work except to eat and sleep. And they're like, don't want to be like that. So we're doing our thing. And then we saw the millennials coming around and doing the millennial things. And we're like, don't want to be like that. And so we just stuck to ourselves on the outside and watched that happen and just ate the popcorn and enjoyed the entertainment. Right. And so what's going to happen is the millennials primarily are going to be the recipients of the boomer wealth.
Right. I mean, we've talked about this. Obviously, there's a divide, but a majority of boomers raised millennials. Not all of them. There's a split, right? But a good amount of them raised millennials. The core group, right? So it makes sense that the millennials would get that inheritance, right, from boomers.
The millennials being junior boomers themselves in personality, they're going to do the exact same thing and they're going to hoard it. They're going to spend it also, right? So they're going to have paid off their student loans by the time the boomers finally die off, but they're going to have their mortgages. Suddenly they're going to get this house. They're going to get this influx of cash. And then they're going to be like, oh my gosh, but we can rent this house out. We can do this. We can get more money. We get more money. And they're going to hoard it and they're going to continue to make money off of it. And their Gen Z kids are going to be like, but what about me?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Gen Alpha is going to be the recipient of the millennial boon. And you're going to be looking at the Gen Xers saying, you're right, those millennials are a bunch of bastards.
But so my take on this, right, is kind of along these lines of, I think it's important as someone grows and as they're a child, that there is a balance between you figuring shit out yourself and getting support from your parents, right? And so for me personally, I see this as a win for us because it means that that's just less wealth that gets distributed to us, which means we end up in a similar situation as Gen X of you just have to figure it out, right? And so whatever the AI launches that your generation is starting and really pioneering ultimately, right? I believe Microsoft CEO is Gen X.
I'm telling you, Gen Alpha are going to have the very best sex doll partners in the history of robotics.
I just think whatever you guys are pioneering, I don't necessarily know if it's going to be the millennials that take that over or really carry that on.
I think you guys,
we'll see. Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm heading with that, right? So
I think Gen Z is still curious and millennials are just bitter.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and we're entering the workforce at the time of like, so I know I keep bringing it up, but this is really going to be the big thing over the next 10 years, especially the whole AI push, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So Gen Z is entering the workforce with AI is still a newer concept, especially the way that it's developing. And when you're entering a new workforce or entering your career using that rather than trying to figure it out, it gives my generation a leg up. It's like, okay, as millennials and other gens start to try to struggle to implement it into their work life, Gen Z will have worked with it for 5 years starting out. And it's like, okay, well, we're good to go now. We're using it to build better things rather than struggling how to implement it into our Teams chats.
Yeah,
right.
You already know how to set the clock on the on the screen for your car and stuff.
Right. Exactly. I think that will help. It's kind of one of those things where you're already inundated with it. You're already in the mix. And I think Gen Z is curious about the application of it, which will help in us not getting completely screwed over by not getting the money that comes from all the boomers dying.
Yeah.
So, from a social aspect, right? How do you feel that these older generations, no longer being around, how do you think that affects us just in a general social stance? Not necessarily politics per se, but just as a general society. You think it's good, bad? There's pros and cons?
I think it's going to, overall, I think it's going to be bad. No matter how much we can dislike the boomers, but as a generation, their sense of family is stronger than everybody else's. And so with that loss, there's no more, we've been married for 65-year role models type of thing. And so the commitment that comes with that is going to go away. So there's the new barometer is like, oh, that my parents' marriage lasted 8 years. So if I make it 8 years, I'm good.
Right.
And we're already into the breaking down of the normal social construct. And the boomers is kind of like boomers and X really, but are the remnants of previous normalcy, social norms.
Yeah.
So, and I we talked briefly about it in the past, is like we're tearing norms down, but we're not replacing it.
Right.
So there's no new structure.
Right. Yeah. So I think a lot of that, you have all of this one side, the younger generations growing up, and then, like you said, you have this older generation that's still rooted here. So you kind of end up with a balance. Now you're going to lose one side of your balance. Right. With them passing. So, yeah, I mean, I agree. I think it will be interesting to watch and see what happens.
Yeah. And it's like, so to give millennials some credit, they've had to work for what they got because the boomers still alive and hoarding everything, and they've had to wait patiently and impatiently to get that next slot because the boomer is still there. I'm not sure that they are mentally and emotionally ready to handle the impact of sudden wealth. So,
well, and not even sudden, just like financial wealth, but like business wealth, right?
Yeah.
There's a majority of small businesses that are owned by older people. So business wealth too, like, hey, I'm giving you my pizza place or whatever the case may be, right?
Yeah. So how about like conservative dad and mom owns 27 Taco Bell franchises, right? And very progressive liberal children suddenly inherit all of them, right? What's going to happen? They don't know how to run business, and they've never had that much money, so they'll probably just sell them off. And so now they end up with, let's say they make $80,000 a year, all right? And suddenly you have $1.7 million fall in your lap. How are you going to handle that?
Yeah.
All right. People who win the lotteries, $100 million, that kind of stuff, tend to lead miserable and short lives afterwards.
Most people go broke.
Yeah, they go broke, they become addicted, they end up divorced.
Yeah, which when you think about it is insane.
Yeah.
They're like $100 million, like you and multiple people after you should be able to live off that.
And this is why I think big opportunity for financial advisors to be thinking about this and start developing your own training programs for marketing purposes, of course, but little things to get these millennials to say, oh, I didn't even think about that. Let's call this guy.
Yeah.
And so when it does happen,
Yeah,
they're right there.
Yeah, because then ultimately, right, so if you keep moving on this idea of millennials or whomever, right, raised by this group, always had a crutch and somebody that would save them, now you can be that person that saves them, like, oh, well, I have the solution for you, right? You have all these things now. I can manage it for you, right? I can take care of it for you. And now if I'm a millennial or anyone, it's like, oh, now I don't have to manage this or think about it or take care of it. You just do it for me and you tell me what I can do.
You gotta have the long game in mind. I'm not sure. I think most financial advisors are long game thinkers.
Well, if they're good financial advisors, that's usually what it is.
But for them, I think it's a longer game.
Yeah.
So they're thinking, to get this client, I need to make sure they're taken care of for 30 years. By the longer game, I think they need to go, hey, how am I going to get my clients, what do my clients in 15 years, my first year clients in 15 years need?
Right.
And that might be where Gen Z comes in.
Right.
Because, a millennial financial advisor will, worth their salt, is probably going to go ahead and retire by the time their millennial peers get that money and it's ready to do something else with it. So
yeah,
it'd be interesting. It's like Gen Z financial advising their elders.
Well, we did it on tech, so
Yeah, and
funny.
Who knows what AI and algorithms will come into play to take care of all that mess.
Yeah, that's true. It will be interesting to see if there is a major breakdown for the first time in passing along generational wealth, right? If it will get passed along, will it maintain enough with the millennials that it gets passed along again or not? It'll be interesting to see that, because you've not everybody, right? Most of middle class doesn't have it, or maybe older generational middle class does, but most of middle class doesn't. So it'll be interesting to see if that cycle starts to break down more.
That'd be kind of funny. I mean, like hysterical, laugh your ass off kind of funny. Is you have like a bunch of bitter millennials complaining about how much the boomers have, right? Nobody needs that much. But the millennials are the political class. And so they create all these laws so that nobody can get that much again. Then they inherit it and they don't get to have it.
Yeah.
Based on their own laws.
Well, the universe loves irony, so that would be funny. God, well, now you don't get it.
Now what are you going to do?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think a lot of people think about that part. Like, you do have these parents, like, and if your parents do have some sort of good financial stability, like, eventually they are going to pass away.
Right.
And, I mean, true, I guess they don't have to leave it to you.
And somebody's getting it, though.
But somebody's getting it, right. So, you may want to think about that when when all of a sudden someone tells you that due to the new financial political infrastructure, you can't accept the money that the $1 million that was supposed to be given to you.
Yeah. Suddenly those Depends and adult wipes don't seem like such a bad idea, huh?
Yeah.
So what else, as far as like the boomers, what else other than the finances and the social, and we really kind of touched on the social structure, but I feel like they're already mostly irrelevant as far as social influence at this juncture. What are we missing about their demise?
So I think the most I don't have the number right in front of me, and maybe we can look it up, but I'm assuming a majority of the people that vote are within the Gen X to Boomer age range, right? So, losing all of that historically conservative side in voting and politics will be interesting to see, because the Gen X would really have to carry that, but
I don't have the numbers.
Well, it's not just the numbers thing. I mean, yes, that's one piece of it too. But where I was going with that is, as you've already stated, from your perspective, it seems that each generation becomes more and more liberal. So by default, like following that logic, that means that Gen X did as well from their parents. So even if you had the numbers, it still wouldn't be the same. So it'll be interesting to see how voting changes, and in that entirety of it, as the boomers continue to kick the bucket, as you said earlier.
Yeah. So I was thinking about the Roman Empire, like a week ago.
Yeah, because that's what guys do. They just think about the Roman Empire.
Well, I compare it to the U.S.
Yeah.
Right, and the rise and fall, and there's a lot of similarities between the Roman Empire and the U.S. And the Roman Empire got too big and spread out, and you look at the U.S. landmass, and what holds a country together are its cultural similarities, relevance, and language. And when you spread out too far, you lose the cultural similarities, and then you have the language barriers. If you don't speak the same language, you're not the same country. And then they had this social breakdown, the orgies and all that kind of stuff and that type of thing. And that led to the degradation of their nation and that kind of stuff. And I'm like, what if we are just following in the footsteps of the Roman Empire?
So I think personally, one thing that's different from that is, I don't think, obviously everybody is not on the same page, but for the most part, what my generation says and what your generation says can talk to each other, right? For the most part. Not everywhere, but for the most part. Where we start to have the separation is with, in my opinion, the boomer generation. And so I think that's where our similarities start to not be the same, is because the younger generation can still talk to you and you guys are the next one up. So we still have that communication, even with the breakdown of like some of the social structures. So I'm curious how that plays a factor, because we can still communicate in that whole scenario.
You think somewhere out there is going to be like Gen Alpha is going to be like, when are those Gen X fuckers going to die off?
Maybe.
Why are they still here? They're irrelevant.
I don't think so, because so you guys have I would say one of the most, especially over the last 5 years, one of the most influential, controversial, and potentially, I guess, like, world-altering people in your generation.
I love that guy, even when I disagree with him. But when I disagree with him, it's an opinion thing and not a fact thing.
Okay, and I think you know where I'm going with this, right? So, and not to just continue to be his fanboy, but Elon Musk has, regardless of agreeing or not agreeing with the things he says, has made a ridiculous impact. And and I don't mean like Tesla and all of that. Just in general, there is not a single person who doesn't know who he is and hasn't heard about something he's done or said or a company that he has, right? If you don't know about Tesla, you've heard about rockets and SpaceX. If you don't know about that, you've heard about Neuralink or Boring Company or whatever the case may be, right? And so because of that, I don't think Gen X is going to lose the younger generation like the boomers lost the younger generation. Because of that, because of the
tech connection.
Yeah, the tech connection, right? The whole electrify and all, and that push, that's something that the younger generation really agrees with. Regardless of like all the different arguments and stuff, that's what they agree with. So I don't think you're going to lose them because of that, because you have the most influential person in that realm, like in that generation. Right?
Do you think he's the most influential person in the world?
I think right now, he's pretty damn close. I don't know if like for sure, but he has companies in many different countries at this point. Not like base companies, but he has factories or whatever, if you will, in many different countries. He visits most of them and has in-depth interaction with their leadership. I'd pretty close to say that he's not at least one of the most influential people right now. He has more in-depth conversation with China's leadership than our own president does, which is very interesting. So
our own president can't have a conversation.
well, barring that, right? Like, I mean, he just, because he's got to get all of these different leaderships permission to be able to put things where he wants to put them, he has to have a lot of in-depth conversation about that country's future. So I don't know. I mean, he might be pretty close.
He's up there.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if as many people know as much about even other celebrities as much they do as him, and they don't even care to know it, if that makes sense. It just is all over the place all the time, I feel like.
Mm-hmm. How is your mom going to handle when your grandmother dies?
I don't think it will go well. I don't think it'll go well for any of us, but our family has always really been like, it's always been just me, my mom, my sister, and my grandmother. Like, it has always been very tight-knit. We've always been really close. Every holiday, just about, like, every extra time that we had was always spent together in that group. I think when my grandma passes away, it's going to be extremely difficult for all of us, and I am not looking forward to that at all. As much as I like to rant on the boomer generation, I will be very upset when that day comes.
Do you think that dynamic is abnormal or normal at this point in time?
I don't know, because like, you have good relationships with your parents.
Mm-hmm.
My mom has a good relationship with hers, but I personally don't know how common that is. So for like people that you're around and people your age, is that common for you? Like, do they have a really good relationship with their parents?
Yes and no. It's weird. So I have a great relationship with my parents.
Mm-hmm.
My sister has a good relationship with my dad. And she's mostly annoyed with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
That
sounds about
right. Yeah. It goes to like grandma's trying to tell their daughter how to raise children type thing, right? Mm-hmm. And my mom isn't your stereotypical tiger mom, but she is that person's like, hey, you got a 97 out of 100. What happened to that 3? Right? She's not necessarily condemning you, but she's not letting you off the hook.
Well, yeah, she's Asian. Right. She can't help it.
Right.
Yeah.
So my sister being raised American and my mom being wholly Vietnamese,
right?
There's some conflict there, and it goes up. And my mom's very logical. My sister's very emotional, and my mom gets mad at my sister for making emotional decisions and then needing my mom to send her money to bail her out.
Right.
Crap like that. So it's a little bit different. I just look at it as, yeah, my sister's going to be devastated when my parents die.
Yeah.
And it's going to be hard for me to see my sister devastated.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of wonder, it's like, because we get lost in this pop culture, social media world.
Oh yeah, the whirl on boomers.
And it's like we have this general image of millennials hating boomers, waiting for them to die off. You know, why isn't my parents dead yet? And I don't know if that's really how it is.
Yeah, I think the reality of it is kind of what a shocker for those of you that don't know. The whole point of this show was to kind of dig into that a little and to talk about, is this just a social media thing or is this realistic?
Right.
Some of it is, but then there's other things like this whole everybody hates the boomers. Like we make the joke, about like the politics, the relations, the tech, all that stuff. But the reality is that most people have a boomer in their life that's usually called grandpa or grandma,
Right.
that they really, really love and would be devastated if they pass away.
Right.
If they haven't already, right? And most people that I know in my age group have their grandmother or grandfather that either passed away or, will eventually. And all of them that I know will be devastated when it happens, right?
And you're not from a wealthy family.
No.
So in my lifetime, I've had the opportunity to spend time.
Unless there's something you're not telling me, Grandma.
I've had the opportunity to spend time with people, with families that lived at the poverty level and wealthy families. And, this is just anecdotal evidence. But I can't think of a single wealthy family who had the same amount of affection for each other as what I saw in poor families. And I kind of, in a sense, it's like, that's the gift of poverty is love. And when you have so much stuff becomes a distraction from it.
Well, and this is definitely something like, as far as I understand, psychologically proven. When you go through hardships with someone else, your bond with that person is much stronger.
Oh, absolutely. That's the whole war. When you go to war with a guy, you're bonded.
Yeah.
You had the same bullets coming at you.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, if you don't have hardships, or at least the typical ones, you have other things, right, that comes from wealth, but the typical hardships that you don't bond with the family members going through them, I mean, it makes sense that you wouldn't have the same connection.
Right. So
to make it really sad, your grandma or grandpa's gonna die one day.
Well, they have.
Well, okay, I know you.
My parents.
Sorry, my grandpa and grandma, or my generation's grandpa and grandma is gonna die one day.
Real soon.
Yeah, your parents.
Fairly soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we can time it right, maybe in the next.
Well, it's because I just last week went to visit my parents down in Florida because they're old and that's where all old people go.
Yeah, that's where they congregate.
Yeah, Florida and Arizona.
Yep.
If you're of, Southeast Asian descent, you go to Florida so you can get back to the humidity. And if you're just white, you go to Arizona.
Or Mexican.
Yeah.
Yep.
The dry heat.
Yep.
So I went to visit them and it was a good time. I mean, it's interesting how good of a time it was with just something simple like playing Monopoly with them.
Yeah.
It was funny. We laughed. I won. We laughed. I won.
The best times that I have with my family are us literally just going and visit and just talking and having a conversation. We don't have to be doing anything extra.
Right.
Just hanging out and talking. That's what I enjoy the most about going home for Christmas. Is like just get to hang out, talk with everybody, and enjoy that.
Yeah. But while I was there, I could see the changes with age and that kind of stuff. And I know, I made the mental notes that like I need to come back more often because the time is shortening.
Yeah.
So, it's nice to know about it now than, getting that phone call saying, hey, you need to come. Right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, you need to come bring something all black.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
I think we sufficiently answered the question. What we think will happen when all the boomers die off, though.
Yep. I'll be sad and then happy.
Well, for the most part, that's what they want. Be sad for a minute, cry a little bit, just to be respectful, and then take our money, be happy.
Yeah.
I just hope that the millennials are smart with that.
Well, I would like to. I think something that we really need, just in general, right? It's not about, and for me, it's not about just giving the handout, but just the distribution. We definitely need more distribution of wealth, at least some. Not having enough distribution, hoarding money is what tends to not help with inflation because you got to print more because there's not enough circulating. It's not all the factors, but it's one of them, right? So that would be nice. If you guys could just keep buying stuff and kind of circulating that around, that'd be great. Maybe we can make some changes to our tax system. That would help too.
Flat tax, 10%. I'm down with that.
Not to make it too political, but
get rid of the IRS.
Flat tax would be nice.
If people with guns can come to your house and take your shit and not get in trouble for it by the government, then it's not your shit.
It's not your shit. It is not your shit.
So, I want to tell people what I'm drinking here.
Oh, okay.
All right. I want to give, this is the secret recipe. This is a New Year's, release, if you will.
I don't think you can call it that, but yeah.
I invented this drink.
All right. A New Year's release is a strange way to phrase it.
New Year's. But there's alcohol in it, all right? So
there's booze in it. Okay.
A reveal.
Got it.
I want to do this reveal. I've not shared it with many people in my entire life, maybe a handful.
Now you're going to share it with the
I'm
internet.
going to share it with the world.
All right.
All right, this is Michael King's. That's me. I call it Mud Magic. It's hot cocoa.
Okay.
At least a shot of bourbon, if not two, depending on how strong you like it.
Depending on how muddy you want, how magical you want.
Yeah, that's the magic. Cocoa's the mud. The bourbon is the magic. And then I add some coconut creamer to smooth it out. And it's delicious.
All right.
And you should try it.
Yeah.
And let me know how it is.
Everyone over the age of 21.
That's not an alcoholic.
Go make yourself a Mud Magic. Get your favorite hot cocoa, however you want to make it.
I recommend Angel's Envy bourbon.
He recommends Angel's Envy bourbon. I'm not a bourbon guy, but I guess I'll have to try some just to try some. Yeah, go take your hot chocolate, some coconut creamer, and some bourbon.
Great for the winter. It'll get you through March.
Yep.
I promise.
Get you through March. Especially, we recommend once a day to get through March.
Yeah. And like, depending on your job, like my job, I just try to do it right first thing in the morning.
It's usually what's in my coffee mug. Alrighty, guys. Well, enjoy your new year. Like, comment, subscribe. Try the Mud Magic. Tell us how you like it.
Yeah. And if there's anything you want us to talk about for 2024, let us know.
Yeah, give us some new things. Give us some new topics. What do you want to address? Give us your opinion. What do you think's going to happen when all the old people die?
Absolutely. So, as always, peace be the journey.
Thanks for watching.